Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. WBO, Amanda Serrano deserves to remain featherweight champion on the heels of her third loss to Katie Taylor. Amanda Serrano's quest to take over the junior welterweight division has prevented her from defending her featherweight titles. But in a Monday move that has effectively declared Serrano's pursuit an admirable undertaking, the WBO World Championships Committee ruled to keep Puerto Rico's Serrano 47-4 with one draw and 31 knockouts as its featherweight champion despite her third narrow loss to 140-pound champion Katie Taylor on Friday night. It's unclear when Serrano, 36, will fight again. She hasn't fought at featherweight since October of 2023, when she successfully defended her belts against Eddy Reynoso just over 2 months after defeating former champion Heather Hardy by way of a unanimous decision. A 7-division champion, a record in women's boxing, Serrano's impressive standing as an ambassador for the sport, in no small part due to her 3 fiercely contested battles with Taylor, was certainly considered in the WBO's decision. Their ruling will likely influence other sanctioning bodies who have worked in some cases to strip champions who are too inactive in their divisions. WBO President Gustavo Olivieri explained why he backed Serrano to boxing scene. I intend to recommend to the WBO Championships Committee that Amanda Serrano's status as WBO featherweight champion be retained, Olivieri said. Amanda's extraordinary accomplishments, which are without precedent, speak for themselves. Moreover, her decision to rise from featherweight up to junior welter in pursuit of another historic milestone reflects the character and ambition of a Hall of Fame career. Such achievements and pursuits are deserving of recognition and cannot be disregarded. So is Gustavo and the WBO, are they right in their decision to allow Amanda to keep the WBO title having not defended it in over a year?
I would say they are.
You have to consider who the WBO's number one contender is for this to make sense. The number one contender is former champion Sarah Mahfoud, that Amanda Serrano already fought, already beat something like 2 or 3 years ago. And I don't see Sarah complaining. I don't see Sarah in any hurry to get in there with Amanda Serrano again.
Maybe if it were someone else, I could see, and maybe if it were someone who felt disenfranchised and alienated.
Somebody who's pushing for their title shot, somebody who's pushing for their crack at the apple, but Sarah already got hers 2 or 3 years ago and she lost a lopsided decision. So in that situation, I think it's perfectly okay for the WBO to allow Amanda to keep her belt now that she's moving back down. Ahead of Friday night's trilogy, she said she would be returning to the featherweight division, win or lose.
It is a little bit different via the WBA.
Via the WBA, Jennifer Miranda is the interim champion, the same Jennifer Miranda that just gave Alicia Baumgartner all she could handle. She's the fighter who's in a pole position to challenge Amanda for the full title or be elevated to full champion should the title go vacant. Jennifer is. The fight that she just had against Alicia Baumgartner was actually a great advertisement for what could be a Serrano versus Miranda fight. If Amanda so chooses to defend the title against her, if the WBA orders it, that is something they can do.
Or Amanda can vacate the title, let it go to Jennifer Miranda, who MVP just so happens to promote. That's another way that they can play it.
And what would Amanda do in that scenario? Go unify titles with Nina Menka or Tiaria Brown. There are a lot of options there for Amanda Serrano, who still is the biggest name at the weight and one of the biggest names in the sport. So ultimately, I don't think there's anything wrong with the WBO's decision because, like I said, the number one contender via their ranks is a fighter that Amanda Serrano beat comfortably.
And via the WBA, there are several ways to play it. Now, I don't think that Amanda Serrano's going to stick around for that much longer. Maybe she has 1 or 2 more fights at featherweight before she decides to call it a career and fully steps into her managerial role at MVP.
A rebound fight to get back in the winner's bracket and what could be her swan song from the sport of boxing. I don't think Amanda's going to be boxing much longer because she really doesn't have to. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, Eddy Reynoso, starting now, I will be working with a team I can 100% supervise.
His reaction to the scrutiny that he is now under as a result of Francisco Vargas's positive test for banned substances after his win over Galal Yafai.
People are blaming Eddy. Eddy Reynoso has vowed to take a more proactive approach with all of his fighters. The 2-time Trainer of the Year has grown tired of his name being tied to drug scandals, particularly in recent months. Any boxer who wishes to fight under his guidance moving forward must now commit to his direct hands-on approach, without exception. Starting now, I'll be working with a team I can 100% supervise, Reynoso told ESPN Knockouts Salvador Chava Rodriguez. I've let the boxers who have come to me to train have their own work team, independent of what my training entails. So what I'm going to do from now on? Work 100% with the team that I can supervise and manage, not because the other boxers have bad teams, but so that I have 100% control of the boxers I am going to be training. The decision was made in the wake of 2 recent boxers, Jaime Munguia and Francisco Chihuas Rodriguez, testing positive for banned substances in separate fights. Munguia tested positive for exogenous testosterone during a post-fight urinalysis following his May 4th unanimous decision win over France's Bruno Surace. The win came less than 5 months after Surace knocked out Munguia in the 6th round of a massive upset in Munguia's hometown of Tijuana, Mexico.
This is all intended to preserve Eddy Reynoso's reputation that is now tarnished as a result of how many boxers that have tested positive for banned substances have him as a link, a common denominator. To me,
it's very obvious that the fighters that train under him are in fact doping, and he is a party to it. It's just that he's not the only one. I think that this is going on all over the sport, so pigeonholing Eddy by himself doesn't make sense to me. What they need to do is do a better job of hiding it. One key move made by Munguia ahead of his rematch was enlisting the services of Eddy Reynoso. However, his drug testing snafu has now left him open to a potential multi-year suspension, fine, and forfeiture of his May 4th win. Reynoso has supported Munguia through the process, but also made a point to note that he did not oversee the former titleist's nutrition during camp. That comment was backed by Munguia and his team, who went on record stating they've worked with the same nutritionist Marco Antonio Perez Espinoza for his entire career. Most recently, Mexico's Rodriguez tested positive for a banned substance following his stunningly dominant unanimous decision win over unbeaten Galal Yafai. Their June 21st WBC interim flyweight title fight saw Rodriguez batter Yafai, a 2020 Olympic gold medalist, and drop him en route to the upset win on the road in Birmingham, England. The win is now under review after it was revealed on July 9th that a post-fight test produced adverse findings of a banned substance. Reynoso's link to Rodriguez, 40-6 with 1 draw and 27 knockouts, was through a sponsorship. The trainer's No Boxing, No Life brand had a 3-fight deal with Rodriguez, but the two did not train together. For this, or any other fight. However, speculation of Reynoso's influence grew after Rodriguez posted on Instagram a picture of the two standing together in a gym holding Rodriguez's newly won secondary title. "Thank God for putting me on the right path," Rodriguez said on the social media post. "Mr. Eddy Reynoso, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to believe when no one else did. I will be grateful to you all of my life."
And it's been widely reported that Eddy Reynoso doesn't even train that guy, but people are still taking it how they want, and they are still interpreting this as another dirty Eddy Reynoso fighter.
"Let's go for 4 titles with God's favor. It's an honor to be part of your team," said Francisco to Reynoso. "Management, don't be afraid to start over. You may like your story better." Reynoso was quick to shut down that talk, but is still left with 4 boxers with direct ties to their past drug testing scandals: Munguia, Oscar Valdez, Julio Cesar Martinez, and legendary 4-division and reigning undisputed super middleweight champion Saul Canelo Alvarez,
whose drug testing scandal predates any of those and whose relationship with Eddy Reynoso predates any of those.
So, he can do what he can to try to preserve his image, but his image is already tarnished, and what happened with Canelo would be the smoking gun.
This has been going on.
Better late than never for Reynoso to right the ship to avoid any further accusations, false or otherwise. Oscar Valdez is an impeccable young man, noted Reynoso in reference to the former 2-weight champion's 2021 positive drug test that was ultimately dismissed by the presiding commission. He's a very disciplined young man, like few I've seen in boxing. This problem arose, it was resolved, and the fighter defended his title in a win over Robson Conceição, a quote-unquote win. Some people actually scored that fight for Robson going away.
And the particulars of why Oscar was allowed to fight anyway and allowed to keep his title are lost to the annals of time, since most people these days can't be bothered to read through a full article, as they have notoriously low attention spans.
All that they remember is that this was an Eddy Reynoso fighter, and this is yet another fighter connected to Eddy that popped hot.
For them, that's all they need to know.
Jaime Munguia is also very disciplined, who was having a great career, and this small detail came up. Now, what I'm going to do is get advice and get a good nutritionist team that is more attached to VADA, and that is closer to the people who manage VADA to try to do things better. Reynoso is currently overseeing camp for Alvarez's upcoming super middleweight title fight with Terrence Bud Crawford. Drug testing as contracted through VADA began on May 10th for the September 13th bout at Allegiant Stadium, home of the NFL's Las Vegas Raiders.
So here's what it boils down to. You can say that you weren't training Francisco Vargas and you're not part of Jaime Munguia's nutritional team, but
you can say that
to wash your hands of all of this. But at the same time, when you say that you're going to be changing the way you do things, that's almost an admission of guilt. That's almost like accepting personal responsibility for what's going on, even though, according to you, it's not your fault. You're not providing your fighters with banned substances. Okay then, why are you changing things? Why do you even feel the need to address this if you don't train this guy and you don't provide drugs to that one?
Too many situations like this one, he feels the pressure. Otherwise, why would you address this same situation 2 times? Regarding Francisco Vargas, why change anything if there's nothing to change? You're innocent and there's nothing going on behind the scenes. Why do it?
All of this for something that has nothing to do with you. All of this over a fighter you're not even training.
Men's junior middleweight news. Champion Bakram Murtazaliev versus Erickson Lubricant is in the works for early fall, promoter says. IBF junior middleweight champion Bakram Murtazaliev has turned his attention to making a mandatory defense of his belt versus Erickson Lubin, boxing scene learned Tuesday. Murtazaliev promoter Kathy Duva previously was pushing for Murtazaliev to gain an IBF exception and fight England's Josh Kelly in the late summer or early fall, but the IBF informed Duva it was going to demand the mandated defense against top-ranked Lubin, 27-2 with 19 knockouts by November, making scheduling of both bouts impossible. That is impossible without forfeiting the red belt. So I guess now we know why the fight didn't happen, where before, Bakram was blaming Team Kelly for it.
He should be blaming the IBF.
Earlier efforts to strike a deal between Murtazaliev and Kelly slowed over efforts to strike a broadcast deal. Murtazaliev's manager, Igor Klimas, confirmed the boxing scene. Duva and Tom Brown of TGB/PBC subsequently shared a Tuesday morning phone call to move forward on Murtazaliev versus Lubin. Russia's Murtazaliev became champion with a road win in Germany over Jacques Colquet, then more emphatically defended his belt by knocking down former WBO champion Tim Kazoo 4 times before finishing him in the 3rd round in October in Florida. Florida's Lubin, 29, is coming off an 11th round stoppage of Adriel Holmes in May, his 3rd consecutive victory since a loss to WBC junior middleweight champion Sebastian Fundora. The effort to fight Kelly was based on Duva's interest in staging the Lubin fight before Murtazaliev needed to take a break for Ramadan, beginning in February. After training through the religious period for Colquet, if all of this comes into fruition, Bakram will have only fought once this entire calendar year and once since knocking out Tim Kazoo. Duva said Saudi Arabian boxing financier Turki El Al Sheikh also sought a Murtazaliev bout against unbeaten WBC interim champion Virgil Ortiz, but when the subject was broached with the Ortiz camp, they rejected the fight because of the IBF requirement of a fight day weigh-in, which both the champion and the challenger are forbidden from rehydrating more than 10 pounds over the bout's weight limit.
And people often wonder, why don't you ever see more familiar names in the IBF's rank standings?
That's why they don't want to subject themselves to that rehydration cap, so they tend to go to the WBC and the WBA that are more freewheeling. Seems odd that they'd say no after only recently moving up in weight, but that's what happened, Kathy Duva said. When the IBF pressed the issue on Murtazaliev fighting within 3 months of this week, Duva said there was no option but to meet Lubin, whose only other loss was to former undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermell Charlo back in 2017, about 34 or 36 seconds into the 1st round.
So the night of the fight, if they actually get it over the line, it will have been roughly a year's time since Bakram Murtazaliev last fought.
Suppose that improves Erickson Lubin's chances of victory, since he's already fought once this year in what was an IBF final eliminator on Pro Box against Adriel Holmes.
Is this going to be a PBC show in the fall?
It could be, or they could outsource both fighters to Pro Box, where Erickson Lubin last fought. You could argue that Erickson Lubin is in some ways more experienced than Bakram, that he has fought better fighters than Bakram has fought, though not necessarily for the better because those fighters beat him.
Jermell Charlo, Sebastian Fundora.
Classic matchup of the boxer versus the puncher, as Lubin would be the boxer and Bakram would be the puncher. I don't trust Erickson Lubin's durability here. I don't. I think that if Bakram gets in with a few good ones, he could hurt him, he could finish him.
And that's not being a slave to the moment that Bakram knocked out Tim Tszyu. In a very general sense, Lubin is not that durable. I mean, he got knocked out a few seconds into the 1st against Jermell, and he got his face rearranged by Sebastian Fundora.
Bakram might do the same thing.